Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I am given the blessing by our Almighty Creator to proceed with this sharing of knowledge and experience with regards to the environmental law. And now we are in the third schedule of the Clean Air Regulation 2014. All right. Now, for those of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. Please benefit from all the videos that we have uploaded into the YouTube, and I believe when you subscribe, you are able to click into the channel and have all the video accessible for your disposal. All right, for you to use. For those who have not subscribed, please be kind enough with a clear conscience within you, I believe, to subscribe and support what we are doing. All right. So let us go into this particular part whereby we are now in the third schedule discussing part I on chemical and petrochemical industries of all sizes and look at their emissions standard based on the Clean Air Regulations 2014. All right, let us move on into this particular slide again. For those of you who have just joined in and and join in and watching this video without watching the other previous earlier videos that we have uploaded, this might help you because we are actually in the middle of discussing the emissions standard of all the industries listed in the first schedule of the Clean Air Regulations 2014. Now, as I have said earlier, and I will say it again now, that when we look into the Clean Air Regulation, the first thing we need to do is to look into Regulation 13. Regulation 13 will help us identify one important list called first schedule. We have to identify whether or not our industry or our activity is listed in the first schedule. That is the first thing that we should do. This is what you have displayed before you is the list of industry in the first schedule. All right. And we ask ourselves, is our industry or activity listed here? If it is listed here, then the emission standard from our industry is based on the first schedule, then it is here, third schedule. So if our industry is listed in the first schedule, we are subscribing to the emission standard of the third schedule. This is what the law says. However, there is another phrase towards the end of that particular paragraph of the law, which says that as the case may be. This is okay for me as far as dealing with the law is concerned. It is quite straightforward. Nonetheless, at some point, especially when you look into the third schedule emission standard, below the tabulated so-called parameters and emissions limits, there are some paragraph called notes. Somehow or other, I may be wrong, but this is how I feel. Somehow or other, I believe the set of people or the people who write the note isn't the same people who write the law above it. That's why I feel, because some of the notes are quite discomforting and can confuse some industries. I will show you later on. All right, so let's concentrate on this one. We'll get into this, all right, and by right, according to the law, first schedule activities just refer to third schedule, because everything in the fourth and fifth schedule is already covered in the third schedule, what they call emission standard, you know. Right, never mind. Let's continue with this with the next one. Now this is discussing the emission standard coming from chemical and petrochemical industry of all sizes. The first word is chemical industry. The chemical industry listed here, if you look at it, it can be in inorganic chemical. What are these? Inorganic chemical, probably involving the making of, say, sulfuric acid is inorganic. Nitric acid is inorganic. What else? Potassium chloride, for example, is inorganic. Copper sulfate solution. All the industries making these chemicals are inorganic because they are inorganic. As you know, when it's organic, it contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. All right. So this sort of industry, including the manufacturing of, somehow, acetic acid is organic acid. So it is classified as organic now. Okay. Organic chemical. The same thing in the production of, what about oleochemical? Oleochemical from palm styrene, malic acid, stearic acid, and all this. These are all organic chemical. That is why they call it oleochemical. Palm oil chemical, oleo, oil chemical. Excuse me. All right, got it? So that's by definition of chemical. Now the other one is, that is chemical, clear? Now let's take a look at petrochemical. These are actually industries which is downstream from the oil and gas industry, downstream from petroleum industry. And according to this law, all sizes. So chemical and petrochemical industry, organic and inorganic, are subscribing to this law. Pharmaceutical, it could be packaging or blending, mixing to make drugs or other kinds of medications, all right, including packaging, when they are producing 5 tons or more of product per day, then they are subscribing to this particular schedule. However, for the pharmaceutical, where mixing and packaging of these materials are involved, if they are less than 5 metric tons per day in production throughput, then automatically they are subscribing to fourth and fifth schedule, which is very clear, isn't it? Now, something is discomforting about this when you read a note below the table. If you look at the law, you've got the table like this. Just show you. Hopefully you're able to see it. Could you see that? All right, and there's a note. See the word note there? That is in some form rather, if not inconsistent, I would say deviated from the intent of the main law stipulated under third schedule, you know, and we got to check that with the authorities on how would they perceive those notes. But never mind, that is another part. Now, for me, it's clear. The third schedule is all there. Look. Now, these are the parameters. Hydrochloric acid fumes. Look. What is the unit? Milligram per cubic meter. What is the limit? Must be less than 200 milligram per cubic meter of sulfuric acid at all time. At all time. What if we can't comply? Then we got to ask for a contravention license. Simple as that, isn't it? Now, the next parameter, nitrogen dioxide, and the parameter is in the unit milligram per cubic meter. What is the stipulated limit? Now, nitrogen dioxide shall be less than 700 milligram per cubic meter of emission from this facility, any of the above processes. And the next one is ammonia, also in milligram per cubic meter. And ammonia is limited to 76. It must be less than 76 milligram per cubic meter at all time. And there is free chlorine gas, and it is limited to 32. It must be less than 32 milligram per cubic meter at all time. And also sulfur dioxide is limited to 100 milligram per cubic meter of emission. Nonetheless, there is one hazardous substance here, which is mercury. All right, and the unit is milligram per liter, and the presence of mercury in terms of air pollutant emission from this industry must be less than 0.05 milligram per liter at all time. That is very, very, very low. Okay, and it's good for our environment, it's good for us. Now, another parameter is hydrogen sulfide. It is limited to, it shall not be equivalent, it must be less than 7.5 milligram per liter, 7.5 milligram per cubic meter at all times. So these are all in milligram per cubic meter, and total particulate matter from this industry is limited to 50 milligram per cubic meter. Simple. And all the fonts, the figures are in blue fonts. I believe you remember in the previous slide that when the numerics that I display is in blue font, it does not require any continuous emission monitoring system. It requires periodic monitoring system, and based on this regulation, it does not stipulate how often to do monitoring. So we got to refer to regulation 16, which says that monitoring, unless otherwise specified by this particular part, shall be done once a year. Once a year, all right? And no CEMS. That is very clear. Now, I want to share with you something which is not quite conducive for me. Look, there is a note under this particular law. If you don't mind, let me just read it for you for a while. Number one, note number one, under this, under I, chemical and petrochemical industry, under I. Number one, it says that gaseous and volatile organic compounds shall be indicated as total organic compound. Total organic carbon. That is fine. Number two, for the control of non-methane volatile organic carbon emissions, best available techniques economically achievable shall apply as outlined in the best available techniques economically achievable guidance document. Look, Do you see this particular part? Any parameter called NMVOC? See now, this is in the third schedule of this particular industry. The person who wrote this law has studied, but I have the feeling the person who wrote the note is a different person or a different group of committee, which I'm not sure. Sometimes it is putting industries in a little bit of discomfort, if not confusing. Now, number three says that new facilities for the production of chlorine or alkali using asbestos for the diaphragm or amalgam process are prohibited. All right, this is clear. New facilities for the production of chlorine and alkali using asbestos for the diaphragm or amalgam process are prohibited. Number four, for mixing and packaging of chemicals, this is for this one. This is specifically for this one. Okay. It says that for mixing and packaging of chemicals, pesticides, and pharmaceutical products with a capacity of equivalent to or more than 5 tons of product per day, it's that one now. A, total dust, including organic substances specified as hazardous as in the 5th schedule, semicolon. What is it? Total dust, including organic substances specified as hazardous as in the 5th schedule. Meaning, we have to add one more parameter here, total dust, for pharmaceutical mixing and packaging, which is not stipulated here in the 3rd regulation. Right. Part B. Waste gases containing dust shall be collected at the place of origin and fed into a de-dusting system. It is being done in industries. Part C. Dust emissions in waste gas shall not exceed a minimum mass concentration of 5 mg per meter cube. Why do you have to say mass concentration? A chemist knows 5 mg per meter cube is concentration, and concentration is a mass over volume. Why do you have to say mass concentration? That's something that I don't understand. And part D, dust emission with a composition of hazardous substances or prepared of 10% or more shall not exceed a maximum mass concentration in waste gas of 2 mg per cubic meter. Dust emission, meaning dust emission which contain hazardous substances or preparation of 10% or more, or preparation of 10% or more shall not exceed maximum concentration of 2 mg per cubic meter of dust emission. Meaning dust emission with the composition of hazardous, meaning dust emissions containing hazardous substances shall not exceed 2 mg per cubic meter. I mean, look, with that note, industry will no longer take a look at Regulation 13, 3rd schedule as the main regulation. Industry is forced to look into 5th schedule. I believe that is what is meant by case as the case may be basis, and that is quite troublesome. And I believe if you're from this industry, please concentrate on all these items. And I have the feeling you have to add in a parameter here like dust. All right, you have to add in the parameters like dust containing organic substances. All right, and dust containing hazardous substances. Sorry, dust containing hazardous substances and I believe you have to refer to the 5th schedule. You got to add in on your table because it's not represented well in that law, in this particular law, in the law book. So for chemical and petrochemical industry, what we can confirm now is that no CEMS is not required under the law. And if your dust contains hazardous substances, you got to list it down. But before you do that, you have to do a baseline study. You got to do a baseline study to check all the hazardous substances in the 5th schedule, whether you have any of them, any of them. If you have a list of them, you got to add in the list over here. You have to add in your list. Okay, that is based on the note given under part I of 3rd schedule. Yeah. So please liaise with the relevant authorities. I believe they have ears to listen to you, and they have experts that would advise what is suitable for your industry. But anyway, the monitoring is just once a year, and I believe it is quite appropriate. All right. So I thank you for the time. I apologize for any what you call insufficient information that I have probably not shared with you, but we'll meet again in the next video inshallah. So thank you for the time. I hope this is a benefit to you. Till we meet again in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye bye.